top 5 cities for dating for men in the USA. I spent the last 3 years traveling around the USA, working remote, having probably been to over 40 cities and towns. If I liked the place, I would stay longer and as long as I wanted. If I didn't like it, I would move on quickly. So I have this range of experience, much more than almost any other top 5 city for dating video, because most of those other videos are people who've only visited like 4 to 5 cities in the US and lived there. I've literally lived in over 30 cities, and places I liked more, like New York or Miami, I stayed really long. I immersed myself there. I went to all the social groups, running clubs, and so forth. And so I really have a sense for all these cities. So currently, here's some more proof. I'm in the beautiful Chinatown area of Las Vegas. And if you look closely, there's that mountain range in the back. It's beautiful. So let's get into it. So many cities, so many things. My 5th choice is Atlanta, Georgia. Now, Atlanta has a large metropolitan area. It's actually the Hollywood of the East Coast. A lot of big films like The Avengers were filmed there. So people don't realize it's a huge Hollywood hotspot. But then there's a lot of people flowing through. It's a large metropolitan area, which means there's more stuff going on, more people that you could potentially meet. Now, the downsides of Atlanta is that it is a lot of suburbs. It's not like a city. You can drive into the city, but then you have to pay for parking, and then there's tourists, and then so on and so forth. But most of Atlanta is actually more suburbs where you drive in. So it oftentimes kind of functions more like as, small groupings of people when you go to like a salsa class or something. So that's good and bad. You're not meeting floods of people like New York, but you still get that metropolitan area with lots of stuff to do. Now, I actually assessed a lot of the cities and towns that I didn't include on this list, and there's a reason for that why I chose Atlanta and other big metropolitan areas. One of them being the fact that they are, in fact, bigger. Having been to a lot of small towns like Farmington, New Mexico, and Leadville, Colorado, beautiful for nature, but not so good for meeting people. There's just not enough people. There's nothing to do there. So Atlanta, you got good food, you got lots of stuff going on, and so on and so forth. Okay, moving on to number 4. By the way, Atlanta's hot, so just keep that in mind. Number 4 on my list is Washington, D.C. Once again, a lot of cities get overlooked in these, top 10 cities to live for dating for men videos, because the creator haven't lived in all the cities I have. And I think that Washington, D.C. is actually a really good city to choose, because it's actually overlooked, but it also has a great girl-guy ratio. And because of that, you have a higher chance. Plus, a lot of the people there are well educated, and they usually have some good jobs, smart, they went to good schools. Typically they're there for politics, but you got a lot of smart people flowing through the city. And now this is actually my hometown, so I can say that I've lived here or near that area for over 20 years of my life, almost 28. So I know it really well. And I would say one downside is it's a small city. So the actual square footage of DC is like not that large. And then you have Maryland and Virginia bordering it. So most people live in the suburbs of Maryland and Virginia and commute into DC. So it's really not a huge city, to be honest. Case in point, their Chinatown is really only 1 block, and the restaurants there are not so good. However, it still beats, Farmington, New Mexico, and some of those other small towns I passed through in my travels. Once again, large population, very international crowd, very diverse. And that's another thing, if let's say, this video is focused on just any man. But I also did a video on top 5 cities for Asian men, and there's a difference in these two videos. And one of the reasons Washington, D.C. is something that's recommended in either list is because of the diversity there. So if you are a minority, you aren't necessarily scrutinized or discriminated against as much. So that's really important. Maybe not so much for this video, since it's, you know, all men, including white men. But still, I mean, it's, if you like a diversity of culture, if you don't want to just be dating like Latina women all the time because you're in a southern city, then Washington, D.C. is a great place. Moving on to number 3. Number 3 on this list is Miami. And Miami, I had to choose because it is, once again, a larger metropolitan city. See the trend there? Like I said, I've been to a lot of small midtown and small towns, like some of the ones I mentioned, plus like Greenville, North Carolina, Asheville, North Carolina. And just to be frank, those places, Destin, Florida, they're great to visit, but it's a small community. And sure, you can be a big fish in a small pond if that's the vibe you're going for. But I personally found you just have more of a chance when you have, you know, hundreds of thousands rather than tens of thousands in that city. So with Miami, obviously, it's a huge, huge city, great weather, great flow of models and other high-flying professionals. Now, think about it. If you're living in Miami, you probably have some money. You probably can afford the rent there. It's not cheap, which means you probably are a high-achieving individual. Now, that's not always the case. And one downside people claim is, oh, it's a superficial place, or, oh, it's all about flash and looks and Bitcoin billionaires. And while there is some of that, I disagree. And I would argue it really depends on the crowds you're floating in Miami. I actually went to a lot of down-to-earth places, including running clubs, including salsa classes, and including just like local venues where you can meet people. And guess what? You meet a lot of normal people who aren't like billionaires or aren't superficial in our kind. So sure, it gets this reputation of being more superficial than other cities, usually from outsiders, but also from people who live there. But you know, like I said, it depends on how you're meeting people. If you're going to these flashy, expensive nightclubs, guess what type of people are there? Probably more of the show-offs. But if you're going to these places that are more homegrown, you get a different feel. So I had a different sense of Miami than others, and I met some really kind people too. Sure, in general, I would say, yeah, it's more superficial. There are a lot of people there who are richer, which is why they're dating hotter people. But you don't necessarily have to find that, especially if you're not aiming for like these model types. So there you go, Miami, great weather. I even like swam in the beach in the winter, so it's crazy. Number 2, Austin, Texas. Now, I was in Austin for a while, like a lot of these cities, and I would say it is amazing. So many young people there. You can feel the difference. Having been to a lot of other cities in Texas and around the country, I could feel the difference in the terms of the amount of young people there right off the bat. Dating apps will likely be easier for you because there's just so many young people there, so there's a higher supply. Like I said, there's also some good nature there, and you know, the taco scene is fantastic there. There's tons of entrepreneurs and tech people. It's really the Silicon Valley of Texas, and lots of job opportunities. Now, downsides of Austin. Now, I made a lot of friends and connections in Austin, but I will say, in terms of downsides, it gets hella hot in the summer. I mean, this last summer, it was 100 degrees for 3 months straight. A lot of the entrepreneurs and professionals there got out of Texas in the summer and then returned later. But also, another thing is lots of men there. So there's a lot of women, but there's also a lot of men, and people are moving there every day. I saw a statistic that like 100,000 were moving in every week to Austin. So the traffic scene there is just really crazy. It's just tons of people um, driving, moving in. So you're going to expect a lot of delays with traffic, and it's only going to get worse. Their infrastructure can't keep up with the amount of people moving there. Um, and like with all these cities, every city I've mentioned and been to, there's been someone who's told me that they didn't like it or they didn't like it for dating. And Austin's no exception. I've seen people struggle here with dating. I've seen people succeed. So every city has its contradictory things. But with Austin, I think um, there's so many young people there that I've seen a lot of people do well here, including Asians. So, you know, uh, keep that in mind and stay tuned for the very end where I'll give you like my biggest caveats and conclusions to these cities. But you know, lots of young pretty girls there. You're going to find more like white people. It's more of a southern vibe. There's going to be a lot of like, you know, country-esque things, but Austin's definitely much more liberal than a lot of these other places in Texas. So you're in a good place. Now, before I get to my number one, I have a bunch of honorable mentions that I do want to mention because there's so many cities I've been to. Scottsdale and Phoenix. So they're about 20 minutes apart from each other in Arizona. Now, before I came here, you know, I heard people say, oh, it's a racist place. Oh, it's the worst state for racism. You know, they don't like people who aren't white there. Now, if you are white, like no problems. I think it's a fantastic city. If you are not white, I've actually found it to be much different than I expected. I think it's gotten a lot more diverse over the last 10 years. There's a lot of Asians here, a lot of Hispanics, blacks, you name it. They are here in Scottsdale, Phoenix area. And it was beautiful while I was there. It was exciting. It was fun. It was vibrant. The nightlife scene is pretty impressive there. I wasn't expecting that. And for some reason, there's just a lot of pretty girls there. Must be, I don't know, maybe it's something they drink in the water, but there's just like a higher ratio of like really pretty girls there for whatever reason. But it is more or less a suburb. It has like these higher concentrations of nightlife scenes and pretty girls who, you know, for whatever reason couldn't make it in Miami or New York. And are there. So it's kind of like a tier 2 modeling city. And, you know, very high-end shopping malls and places. I felt very safe while I was there. Las Vegas, Nevada, where I am now, it is a hot spot, a hot center. Maybe not so much for long-term dating, but if you kind of want to get some practice in, go to a bar, go to a club, there's always things to do. From experience, you can go out on like a Wednesday night and the clubs will still be packed. So it's a really great way to get some practice in and improve your skills. And lots of fantastic, amazing food here. And the traffic really isn't that bad at all. I can get from the suburbs to the Strip in like 10 minutes when there's no traffic. In rush hour, it can be worse, but it's really not so bad. Charlotte, North Carolina, and Raleigh and Durham, North Carolina. So Raleigh and Durham are about 30 minutes apart from each other. So they're different cities, but very similar in feel. And then there's also Charlotte, which is a few hours away. Charlotte has a lot of young professionals. In fact, it feels like a city that was built in the last 5 to 10 years. Before that, it was just a town. But it's a huge finance hotspot. So there's a lot of hate to say it, but white young men and women. And so just keep that in mind. I didn't see much diversity there. That's the one downside. And it is more of like a town that was forced into a city. So there's really not that many activities going on compared to a New York. But there's a huge bar scene there. Not so much a club scene, but a lot of people coming in and out in bars. I found it to be a bit more of a suburb than I would have liked. And I wish there was more diversity, but lots of friendly people there. And a decent honorable mention. Raleigh Durham are similar, but I found there to be more dudes there, so it was kind of more difficult in that way, and it was definitely more of a low key type of scene. So I didn't check out the nightlife or bar scene there, and so without that, it seemed kind of slow, kind of dead. And during the days, if I were to go to a park, which I did, or a disc golf park, it was just filled with men and couples. A lot of young people because there's a lot of tech companies there. Google's there, Epic's there, Epic Games, but just way too many young men from my perspective. But like I said, in all these places, Austin, which also has a lot of men and young people, there's people who still do well. So just keep that in mind. Dallas and Houston, Texas, and San Antonio, Texas. So honorable mentions for sure. Houston is like the fourth biggest city in population, I believe, fourth or fifth. So lots of people there, but it's also kind of like a spread out suburb with an actual city center, but very spread out. Definitely seems like a chill place to live, but obviously without the hype or movement of a big city. So I would say Dallas was kind of similar. Both are lots of people, there's lots of people in them, but you're probably not going to find like the top tier, highest professionals or highest quality people there, but you'll still find some pretty good people there. Houston, huge medical center place, so went on a couple dates with med students there. So if you like that there's like working professionals, check that out in Houston. Dallas, obviously more of like a governmental place, but like in all these bigger cities with populations, there's more flow of traffic. But I would peg them as more tier 2 cities. And then San Antonio, huge population too, but definitely more of a tier 3 kind of suburb place. Very wide and spread out. And there's a lot of like local restaurants in towns, so check that out if you want more of like a suburby vibe. And then obviously there's New Orleans, which is a small town masquerading as a city, but if you like that type of vibe and you like the flow of people coming in and out, I'd probably put New Orleans at the bottom of my honorable mentions. And then last but not least, number one. And before I say number one, stick around because there are some big caveats and lessons I've learned that I want to share with all these things said about best cities in the US for dating. Number one is New York City. Surprise, surprise. But I mean, you have to go through all the specifics. Highest population, best girl-guy ratio when you compare to the worst. There's a reason why I didn't include Seattle or San Francisco. Terrible ratios. A lot of my Asian brothers and people I know who have lived there or live there now say it's terrible for dating. So just keep that in mind. New York City also has a lot of professionals, lots of young, working women who are not just, cocktail waitresses or models. That you get that in Las Vegas here. Like the industry here, you're not going to find as many doctors, lawyers, executives, account managers, and tech as you would in New York. So a lot of high achieving women, not just in terms of looks, but in terms of status. Not status, working professionals. Lots of flow, lots of career opportunity, lots of job opportunity, and there's so many people that you can find your pace. Even if you're not aiming for the top, you can find someone at your level in New York City. And it's just a really great city with a lot of stuff to do. So need I say more? You got the food, you got the culture, you got the diversity. It's more accepting of your ethnicity there. And it's just a melting pot of so many different things. Downsides, of course, really expensive, pretty dirty. I lived in Brooklyn and Queens and Upper West Side for a while, and those places can look kind of ratchety. So unless you're rich enough to live the New York Manhattan life, then you're going to expect things to get like there's less and less to do the farther out you go. So you have to keep in mind that you have to sometimes commute in from Queens or somewhere else 30, 40 minutes away. So it's not really that glamorous New York life if you can't afford it. Which is why now I want to get to my caveats and lessons learned and important points being made. So, one big point is that in my experience, and I think in a lot of people's, you don't want to obsess over optimizing over cities. You're going to hit diminishing returns after a while. If you do have the fortune of moving around, traveling like I do, I have found that moving to New York or any of these other cities, you don't see a significant noticeable change in your dating results by that alone. I assumed I would, but you know, what matters more is first becoming the man and the value as a man that would attract the people you want. If you don't have that core piece and you just kind of suck and your general perceived value is low, when you sum in all the things you have to offer: personality, how you display yourself, style, fashion, charisma, physique, looks, career, everything. If it still sucks, then you may get a situation like me where the difference between cities is almost, I mean, there are some differences still, but it's going to be like, a couple points of difference on a 1 to 10 scale. It's not going to be a night and day difference. And I learned that. It was a shock to learn that when I went to New York and so forth and all these places. Now I've kind of, I've started trying contact lenses and all these other things. But just keep that in mind. You do hear these stories about, oh, I was in New York and I was in Chicago and my results exploded. Well, that could be true, but also you got to keep in mind that that person may have already been a high value to begin with. The second caveat I would like to mention is, with all these places, I really did a scrutiny of all the places I avoided. Notice I checked out all these places and I didn't mention San Francisco or Seattle or some small town in the middle of Georgia that I've traveled to. And there's a reason for that. So be confident that this was a cohesive, comprehensive assessment. And I would say there's still other cities I haven't visited that could be really, really good. So even despite all my years of travel, I've yet to visit like a Chicago. And I've heard from someone I know who's Indian. He's like in med school, that when he visited Chicago, his dating app results just shot through the roof. So he recommends Chicago. And that's really the point I want to make with all these cities, is that almost every single one I've mentioned, I've heard people say they hate it or they love it. I've just been able to travel a lot. I've been able to discuss my travels with a lot of people. So, they'll tell me their opinion when I say I really like Miami. I met a guy in Houston who is from Miami and he said it was shit. He said he hated it. He said it's a small town and so forth. I've met people you get the point. I've just met people in all these different places and everyone has an opinion. And so once again, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Take every video about this topic with a grain of salt, because fact of the matter is you have a unique set of things to offer based off your ethnicity, your personality, your hobbies, interests, values, how you present yourself, how you market yourself on dating apps. And so with all these factors, I think it's best that you just move to a city as a trial run, test it out for a week or two, because you may find that your experience will be completely different. I left out some cities like Nashville, Chicago, Oklahoma City. I've been there, Oklahoma City, and a bunch of others, Boston. And some people may hate them. Some people may love them. I've heard it all. So, you just got to do your best, crunch the numbers, but then go off your gut, go off your heart, try it out. And if you are so fortunate as me to basically try out every city you would want, over 30, 40, 50 cities, At the end of the day, you just try them out yourself. Look at the numbers too. Look at all these videos about the topic like I have, but then try them out and then just use your gut feel, because at the end of the day, um, people may say things, people may say the city sucks, but in your heart, you just feel a difference, and that's what you want to go with. Frankly, you know, I've been told, like, get the hell out of Austin, Texas, get out of Scottsdale. They're not as accepting of Asians. It's in the Bible Belt. And then at the same time, I personally really like those cities. I found that they weren't bad for dating. But, you know, at the end of the day, you can probably do well in every city. There are high quality women in every city. Sure, things may be harder or less hard, and cities are really, really important, but they're not everything. So if you level up as a man, then you can do well in almost any city. And I just want to leave you with that, because I think, sure, you have to pay attention to where you live, because I mean, it could be a 5 times multiplier in your results if you get out of your bumfuck town, which, you know, you didn't consider. And I hear that a lot. I hear a lot of dudes who just, they get out of their bumfuck town, they move to a city, and then their results explode. But just realize it's not everything. You need to take it into account. So don't discount it. Get out of your town, get into a city. And then choose a better city, but do not over obsess over the minutia of, oh, you know, I'm already in New York City, but maybe, you know, Chicago's a little better. So thanks for watching. See you in the next video. And look at this beautiful view of Las Vegas. I mean, incredible. And here we are, literally in Chinatown. You can literally see the wind in the distance. Beautiful hotel. There's another one, Trump Towers. I don't know how I feel about that. And then the beautiful mountain range in the distance. I'm actually going to get some food at one of these restaurants. I heard there's some of the best in the city. So thanks for watching.